At the beginning of the film, a couple finds themselves being chased by a local criminal gang led by the infamous Chang. Seeking refuge, they enter a wooded area, attempting to conceal themselves among the trees. Unfortunately, their efforts prove futile as the gangsters easily track them down. Subsequently, the couple falls victim to a brutal assault, ultimately meeting their demise at the hands of the ruthless gang. The narrative then shifts to a new scene, introducing Yod and Bua, a couple living in a rural village. Deeply in love, they have made a commitment to marry each other when the right moment arrives. Nevertheless, Yod's relationship with Bua encounters opposition from his family due to Bua being a mute girl. Adding to the complexity, Bua's family background is troubled, marked by her father's abandonment for another woman. Despite these challenges, Yod remains steadfast in his determination to marry Bua. On a particular day, Yod and Bua find themselves by the nearby river, gathering crabs for their meal. As they return home with a bucket full of food, a group of local troublemakers unexpectedly hurls a stone at Bua and hastily retreats. This sudden attack causes the innocent girl to bleed, prompting Yod to swiftly escort her back home. Upon reaching home, Bua's mother attends to her wounds and advises her to rest. Following this, she engages in a private conversation with Yod, delving into the intricacies of his relationship with Bua. Despite her advice to cease seeing Bua, insisting that Yod deserves a better spouse and more respectable in-laws, Yod stands firm in his conviction. He dismisses the opinions of the villagers, emphasizing that his love for Bua transcends all other considerations. Despite objections from both families and villagers, Yod and Bua persist in their relationship, sharing time engaged in activities such as fishing, cooking, and enjoying meals together. In the same village, Chang and two companions take up residence. With no apparent occupation, they aimlessly roam the village, inflicting torment and harassment upon its residents. Sustaining themselves through theft from hardworking villagers, Chang, the leader, is frequently chastised by his wife for his irresponsible behavior, though he pays little attention to her admonitions. One day, as Yod and Bua return with their catch of fish, they encounter interference from Chang and his accomplices. The gangsters forcibly snatch the bucket filled with fish, and Chang initiates harassment against Bua. Yod attempts to defend her, but the men easily overpower him. Fortunately, Chang's wife intervenes in the nick of time, breaking up the scuffle and preventing further harm. Later that evening, Yod's father, as usual, urges Yod to move to Bangkok and seek employment, believing it to be the only way to secure income. However, Yod declines, expressing a preference for the tranquility of village life over the chaotic hustle and bustle of the city. The next morning, a diminutive thug pilfers a bunch of bananas from a store before making a hasty escape. Coincidentally, Bua happens to pass by the same shop, carrying a bunch of bananas in her hands. As a consequence of the misunderstanding, the shopkeeper wrongly assumes that Bua is the thief and subjects her to rude insults. Being mute, poor Bua is unable to prove her innocence and begins to cry. Later that day, Yod's mother pays a visit to Bua's mother, advising her to keep Bua away from her son. She makes it clear that she will never accept a mute girl as her future daughter-in-law. Overhearing their conversation from a distance, Bua is left disheartened. In her distress, she makes her way to the fields and starts crying, unable to comprehend why the entire village seems to harbor animosity toward her. Shortly after, Yod approaches her, embracing her tightly. He promises never to leave her side and assures her that they will get married soon. Later, the couple heads to the river for fishing. While Yod is occupied adjusting the fishing net, Chang and his gang stealthily arrive at the scene and abduct Bua. They whisk her away to the woods, where Chang forcefully attempts to undress her. Bua valiantly tries to resist, but her efforts only result in further violence being inflicted upon her. Meanwhile, Yod becomes aware of his girlfriend's disappearance. Upon searching the surroundings, he stumbles upon her abandoned slipper, triggering a realization that Bua is in danger. Determined to find her, Yod rushes into the woods, calling out her name. To his horror, he witnesses gangsters brutally assaulting Bua, leading him to engage in a fierce brawl to protect her. Regrettably, Yod proves to be no match for the assailants and is swiftly overpowered, ultimately losing consciousness. In a tragic turn of events, Chang forces himself upon Bua and callously murders the couple. The gangsters proceed to bury Yod and Bua in an undisclosed location within the woods. Simultaneously, that night, Bua's mother anxiously awaits her daughter's return home. As the night unfolds without any sign of Bua, she grows increasingly worried. Fearing the worst, she decides to seek information from Yod's family, only to discover that Yod has also not made an appearance, intensifying the sense of despair and anguish. Subsequently, both sets of parents embark on a quest to locate their vanished children. Upon reaching the fields, they come across the belongings abandoned by Yod and Bua, heightening their anxiety. A local villager then provides crucial information, revealing that Chang and his gang had pursued the couple the day before. Armed with this knowledge, the parents confront Chang at his residence, only to face threats and dismissal from the notorious gang leader. Feeling helpless, the grieving parents decide to file a missing persons report at the local police station, expressing their suspicions about Chang's gang. Unfortunately, the police demand concrete evidence before considering any accusations. The head officer even speculates that the couple might have chosen to leave for larger cities to start a new life together. In the subsequent scene, the narrative shifts to a member of Chang's gang, Lek. He roams the woods alone, burdened by guilt and unable to escape the heavy weight of their atrocious actions. Shortly thereafter, Chang and another gang member named Fet approach Lek, inquiring about his well-being. Lek, burdened by a sense of remorse, admits to feeling miserable and even suggests the idea of turning themselves in. In response, an infuriated Chang brandishes his gun, threatening to shoot Lek dead if their heinous deeds are exposed to the police. Subsequently, the trio ventures deep into the woods for a hunting expedition, attempting to divert their troubled thoughts. However, to their astonishment, they find themselves haunted by the spirit of Bua as they search for animals. Frightened, the gangsters hastily retreat from the woods. That same night, they are observed reveling with girls, partaking in alcohol and drugs. Amidst their activities, Lek excuses himself to urinate. During this moment, he unexpectedly comes across a girl dressed in white lying on the ground. Approaching cautiously, he turns her over, only to discover that it is Bua. Terrified, he swiftly retreats to rejoin his friends. Upon concluding their gathering, the gangsters return to their respective homes, only to find themselves tormented by haunting visions of Bua. Lek, in particular, retires to his bed but continues to witness Bua's spectral form, seemingly on the brink of attacking him. This nightmarish ordeal robs him of sleep throughout the night. Come morning, Lek confides in Fet, recounting the harrowing experiences he endured. To his astonishment, Fet reveals that he, too, has been haunted by similar visions. Lek suggests that they should leave the village and seek employment in larger cities, emphasizing the impending doom if the villagers discover their heinous deeds. However, Fet urges practicality, asserting that finding jobs for people like them would be nearly impossible. Subsequently, the trio is once again depicted in the forest, engaged in hunting activities. This time, Lek's visions of Bua escalate, compelling him to flee for his life. As he runs, he is abruptly struck on the head with a wooden branch, resulting in his untimely demise. Later that night, Fet succumbs to a relentless nightmare, robbing him of much-needed sleep. Seeking solace, he retreats to the restroom to freshen up, only to be haunted by the spirit of Yod. Overwhelmed by fear that he, too, may meet a grim fate, Fet visits a nearby temple early the next morning, fervently offering prayers for his protection. Following this, he confronts Chang, expressing the intention to confess their crime to the villagers. However, Chang, fueled by anger and denial, responds by violently striking Fet in the face, commanding him to remain silent. Despite Fet's persistent insistence, Chang continues the assault, beating him mercilessly. That night, Chang experiences a chilling dream in which he is bound to his bed, tormented by the vengeful ghosts of Yod and Bua, who menacingly approach him with an axe. The next day, while Fet is fishing at a nearby river, he is jolted by a haunting sound that echoes through the surroundings. Scanning the area, he finds no one in sight. Suddenly, a splash in the water intensifies his fear. Attempting to flee, Fed is seized from behind and forcefully submerged underwater, an ominous event that adds to the growing sense of dread. The untimely deaths of Lek and Fet stir concern in Chang's father, prompting him to implore Chang to confess his misdeeds and avoid a similar fate. Despite the paternal warning, Chang stubbornly refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing, driven by the fear of imprisonment. Unbeknownst to Chang, the vengeful spirits of Yod and Bua are steadily closing in on him. During the night, Chang is asleep beside his wife when he hears mysterious sounds emanating from the kitchen. Startled, he awakens his wife, inquiring if she heard the same noises. However, she dismisses him, scolding him for disturbing her sleep, and returns to bed. Despite her nonchalant response, Chang continues to be haunted by the unsettling sounds, intensifying the foreboding sense of dread within him. In a state of heightened anxiety, Chang rises to switch on the lights, only to find the tube light malfunctioning. Gripped by the fear of darkness, he attempts to light a candle, but it mysteriously extinguishes itself. In that eerie moment, the spirit of Bua materializes before him, instilling terror. Reacting impulsively, Chang grabs a knife and mercilessly stabs the ghostly figure. His horror intensifies when he realizes that he has fatally wounded his own wife, leading to her tragic demise. Overwhelmed by guilt and sorrow, Chang breaks down, crying like a helpless child. Suddenly, an unidentified figure appears behind him and strikes him unconscious. Upon regaining consciousness, Chang finds himself restrained. To his astonishment, Yod and Bua reappear before him, seemingly alive. The truth unfolds. After the gangsters buried the couple, a downpour revived them from their lifeless state. Despite their injuries, they managed to free themselves from the suffocating mud. Supported by each other, they tended to their wounds and sought refuge in the forest for several days. Slowly but steadily, they recovered, fueled by an unwavering determination to exact vengeance for the heinous deeds committed against them. Driven by the conviction that it would take evil to destroy evil, Yod and Bua commenced a haunting campaign against their tormentors, inflicting the worst possible psychological torment before systematically eliminating them. As the chilling truth is laid bare, Chang, now facing the same fate he once imposed on others, pleads for his life, a plea reminiscent of Bua's desperate appeal in the past. However, with the tables now turned in favor of the avenging couple, they coldly dismiss his pleas and bring an end to him, marking the final chapter of their revenge.